Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on my buddy's S2000. We're going to be installing a J's Racing steering wheel with a Honda horn button, work spell quick release, and a work spell short hub. So I'll link all the products in the description. We also have titanium steering wheel bolts, and this is all the hardware and wiring included with the short hub, and this is the hardware included with the quick release. So we're going to be installing this. This will be a DIY, so let's get started. So anytime you're working on airbags, you do want to, of course, remove or disconnect the battery. So we're going to remove the negative terminal of the battery and let it sit for at least 5 to 10 minutes to discharge before you start disconnecting any of the yellow plugs for the SRS system. All right, first thing we're going to need to do is pop off this side panel right here. You see there's 2 notches in order to get pry tool in there. So we're going to use a pry tool, remove this panel, and then on this side we're going to remove this panel right here. It's easy as that. So now we're going to remove these Torx bolts holding in the airbag, and this is yellow plug is the hard airbag wire. So once you release that, this is going to disconnect the power from the airbag, but you should already have disconnected your 12-volt battery already anyway. All right, once you get this yellow plug out, it's a little bit of a safety plug. So it has a built-in, it's not like a regular plug where you just depress a little pin thing on it and it unplugs. It's safety in that you really need to try hard to remove it. So you notice that this piece moves like this, but just doing this simply, and it stops, it has like a stop. Doing this won't let you remove it. You have to really pull hard, and it springs back also, just like as a safety. So pull back hard till you hear it all the way like that, get all the way to that, and then you can disconnect it. Okay, next, like I said, is to remove this Torx bit, and this one is a T30 size. All right, and on the right side, there's another Torx. And you definitely do want to make sure you get the Torx square on here and seat it all the way, because you do not want to strip these. It's not fun if you have to drill these out. Okay, with the airbag release, with the 2 Torx bolts off, you can just pull out the airbag, and of course you've disconnected this already. And next is, I believe this is the ground for the horn, and then this is another connector that you need releasing. So we'll disconnect both of these next, and then remove the center nut or bolt, I guess in this case, and then remove the steering wheel. I believe this one you need to press this piece down and pull it off. So this piece is the release right here. So you're going to want to pull out these wires straight and release them free of all these clips, because this is going to be part of the SRS reel, and these wires are going to stay on the steering column while the steering wheel comes out. So you're going to have to fish these wires back through the steering wheel as you're pulling the steering wheel out. Okay, so this center nut is a center bolt is 14 millimeter. And it is 29 foot-pounds, so when you put it back on, you're going to do 29, but 14 millimeter socket on here. Okay, so a good tip that I forgot initially was put the nut back in here, so you don't, when you're pulling on the steering wheel back and forth, that you don't accidentally yank it out and yank it past these wires and pull off these plugs, because again, your SRS reel, this is part of your SRS reel, and it's going to stay on the steering column. You don't want it to accidentally come off or get torn off. So put this on loosely, that way so you can still loosen the steering wheel, but it won't come flying off. Okay, so the next part is a little bit tricky. You're going to need to yank on the steering wheel, and you can use a steering wheel puller, but this should be good enough. So I try to rock it a little bit left and right, up and down, but you don't want to rock it too much and bend the steering wheel. So typically I just yank on it like a crazy mad ape. So again, I just actually rocked it back and forth a little bit. Again, not too much, and then yanked on it, and then it eventually came off. So we do that. Now we're going to want to pull off the steering wheel And this wire is for your cruise control, so that's going to stay on the steering wheel. It's these three that will go through the steering wheel like so. And important to note, you do want to keep track of where up and down is, as far as how this indexes with the white part of the inside of this SRS reel. There's notches in there. So these notches inside there, right there and right there, up and down, those are going to be indexing with this notches in the back of the steering wheel. And this SRS reel rotates also, and of course this part needs to be on the bottom. But you don't want to rotate this like more than one rotation out of not paying attention, because that may affect your signal cancellation, although I think that's what the white part is for. But just keep that in mind, leave it as in position, and keep in mind that, you know, top of the steering wheel is where those white notches are. You don't want to have that move either. So anyway, just leave it as is, and then now grab your aftermarket hub, and we're going to install that next. Okay, as far as wiring goes for the S2000, you're just going to need to connect this green connector with 2 female ends onto this SRS plug, and that's it. So I just tested it. The SRS light goes off. At this point, you can test if the SRS light works or goes off or not. This is the SRS light fix. So you just connect the power back to your battery. There's no worry about any airbag deploying, obviously, right here. And you watch the SRS light and see if it turns off, which it does. So now we know that the SRS light fix works. And this other one is just for the horn. So now we're going to install the hub and hook up the steering wheel and make sure the horn works. Okay, so again, you're going to want to fish these wires through the bottom of the hub, and making sure that the SRS reel still says up, and that the white ring inside with the notches is still in the up and down position, again to line up with this part of the hub. And the hub on the front, it has a dot for the top dead center. So again, you'll just want to line up the pegs on the side right here and line up everything and stick it on. Okay, so for the S2000, typically you need to cut off one of these extra rings on here. So if you just put it on loosely, it's not touching, but it's not fully on. Once you put the bolt on and tighten it, there's a little bit of in and out that you can do. And so once it's fully in, you can see that it's touching at the top right here, and that's gonna be super annoying when you're turning. It's just gonna be rubbing on the plastic on plastic. So you're just gonna take off this piece and run a razor blade along one of the valleys and cut off one ring on here, and then you should be fully clear. Okay, in order to cut off a ring like this, I got a brand new razor blade, and I'm just going to run it through. You don't necessarily want to use like a Dremel or something like that, because it's going to be harder to keep a straight line, and also it's going to create possibly more work for you in terms of cleanup. So always a nice sharp razor blade is your best option. So I'm just going to line it up with the center of one of these valleys, and firmly and slowly create a score. So again, just keep going slowly, and I'm not trying to go all the way through yet, because I don't want to make a mistake and cut the wrong side or be off. So I'm kind of firmly but lightly scoring it, and I've reached all the way around, because this is kind of soft plastic. So once you score it once, then you've created a path for your razor blade to run through, and then you can kind of keep doing it and hopefully go through like this all the way through. So you can see them all the way through now. and I'm just going to run it along. And the razor blade is in the valley, and it's kind of guiding the blade, the pre-cut that I did. You can also now run the blade like this all the way through. Again, go slowly. And if there's any slight imperfections and you're a perfectionist, just run a little bit of sandpaper, really fine sandpaper. All right, I took 1000 grit sandpaper and ran it along the edges and cleaned it up. So let's throw this on. Okay, with one ring cut off, you can see now that we have enough clearance and there will be no rubbing with the steering column plastics. So now we're going to insert this bolt and torque to 29 foot-pounds. Importantly, if you're watching this, this short hub is billet aluminum and can be torqued down to the stock 29 foot-pound spec. If you have the standard hub, which is the long, double the length hub, it's not billet aluminum, it's cast aluminum, and those are meant to be able to crush under an accident. So they're purposefully made in a different material and made to crush, and those come with their own separate torque spec from WorksBell. It's a lot lower. If you torque the standard hub to 29 foot-pounds, it'll crack it. So this one is billet aluminum, short hub, can be torqued to 29 foot-pounds. Okay, so in order to torque this, you can do it a couple of ways. You can, if you don't have one of these, this is like some kind of cheap strap wrench. You can just put your steering wheel on without the horn button on and hold the steering wheel while putting the torque wrench through the center of the steering wheel. But you can also just do it this way, and this will be able to give you enough leverage to torque, because 29 foot-pounds is not a ton. Okay, so there you go, 29 foot-pounds we're torqued on. Now we just need to put the cover on and put the quick release on. Okay, next step is to tuck these plugs in. So we're going to just wind these in here. Oh, except for this one. Okay, so for the quick release now, you're going to use the provided red wire to bridge the quick release to the power wire of your the OEM wire, the OEM black wire with this black plug. You're going to use that red wire to bridge the two. And then the black ground wire coming off of the quick release, you're going to ground it on the included grounding ring that comes with the quick release, I believe. So as you can see there, it's a perfect fit to their plug and here. And then you're just going to bolt on the quick release with the provided hardware like so. Okay, with the wires tucked in, wires and plugs tucked in, the top, you're going to have to remove the top portion of the quick release in order to bolt it in. But as a reminder, the top part of the quick release is always the one with the little dot in the top. So we have it set up like that, and we're going to go ahead and put in these bolts next. Okay, so quick tip on these. I don't know what the actual torque spec is on these, but you just want to snug them up like this. Okay, nothing crazy. I've seen people really crank on these because they're like, oh, I'm really scared that my steering wheel is going to fall off. Well, they're not. The likelihood that all 6 of these bolts loosen and come off all at one time is very low, especially if you know that you snugged them in. So snug them in, of course, keep an eye on them. You can even use some blue Loctite if you want, but just keep an eye on them on initial drives, see if any of them back out. They shouldn't if they're even just snugged in like a little bit like this. Okay, so for this setup, we're using an OEM Honda horn button, and you notice that this one has 2 tabs, one for power, one for ground. So not every horn button is the same. Some horn buttons do not have this grounding tab. Sometimes they ground off of this thing on this piece on the bottom right here, this brass piece. And in those cases, you're basically grounding off of like this metal ring in here that WorkSpell does include as well. But this one in this case, again, is grounding off of here. So what I did is I actually had to modify it because WorkSpell, they have a smaller, if you compare these two, the power is wider than the ground. The power fits on here, and both of these came the same size, but the ground does not. So what I did was just take a little, you can take a file, I took a Dremel and ground this down narrower, and so it fits with the grounding wire on the WorkSpell setup. So I'm going to hook these up. The ground on the back of the horn is denoted by this grounding symbol right here. That's how you know which one's which. So I'm going to hook up the ground and the power and test out the function of the horn. Okay, so actually with these hooked up now, you can, and the power connected to your 12-volt battery, of course, you can go ahead and test this. And so now we know it's working perfectly. And in this case, we do need, again, this ring in here is typically meant for grounding, but it's also used to put tension on some horn buttons, depending on which horn button you're using and which size you have. So I believe this one, we are going to keep this in here. So I'm going to just fit this in here, and there's a little bit of tension, a little bit hard to get in there, but that's what's going to keep the horn button in your steering wheel as opposed to falling out. Okay, so in this case, we're using the lip of the grounding ring right here, sticking out, have the horn button sticking out like this. This is a special situation because the owner is using a J's Racing steering wheel, and doesn't use the exact same shape horn button as a Momo. So this situation might not work out for you, but you're going to want to do whatever combination you need to do in order to get your horn to sit right. So now that the horn's on there and straight up, again, the dot is where the top dead center is. I'm going to put the horn steering wheel on and just put the steering wheel bolts on, and we're done. All right, so again, these don't need to be torqued on crazy. They just need to be snugged in just like this. Snug, just a little snug like that. You can see that this is completely loose right now. So I'm going to just give it snug like that, and we'll be good. So again, you can check these. Whenever I do this steering wheel install like this, I always check out, as I'm driving, I check each bolt and make sure it's not backing out. But again, once they're snugged in, you should not have any issue. And if you did want, again, you can use blue Loctite just to be safe. But I typically do not want to use Loctite on these because it's a real pain if any of these get stuck or cross-threaded. So that completes the install for the steering wheel. Okay, and here's an example of the other type of horn button where there's no grounding tab. It's going to ground off of this brass ring on the bottom, and so you're going to end up probably having to use, I think this is how it's going to work, is you're going to use this grounding ring right here, and you're going to connect it to the ground off of the quick release, and that's going to sit in there through like that. And the horn button is going to ground off of one of these two or both of them. It's going to touch this inner ring, of course, but I think it's going to be enough to ground the whole system through this ring. So that should work for this type of horn button.